The Walters Art Museum in Baltimore, Maryland, is home to several neoclassical marble sculptures by the 19th century sculptor William Henry Reinhardt. When we view these works of art in the pristine environment of a museum, it is hard to imagine the manual labor involved in their creation. We may call to mind an artist alone in his studio, carefully chipping away at a block of marble, rather than a busy workshop coated in marble dust. But most marble sculptures were carved in industrial workshops, where teams of trained carvers transformed rough blocks of stone into elegant works in marble. The art of carving marble dates back centuries, and Carrara, Italy, with its magnificent marble quarries on the nearby mountains, has long been at the center of this artistic industry. During the 18th and 19th centuries, when neoclassical marble sculptures were popular amongst art collectors, Italy was home to a number of marble sculpture studios, including the Studio Nicoli, founded in the 1830s and still run by the same family today. The tradition of the master artist who develops a concept that is carried out by studio assistants was the predominant model for studio production during the 19th century. Reinhardt's account book lists payments to about 20 workmen during the years he maintained his Roman studio from 1858 to 1874. While the artist often didn't do the actual carving, he or she was responsible for what was considered the most important aspect of the work, the concept and initial three-dimensional sketch, which was developed in clay. This sketch of an eagle was created by sculptor Sebastian Martorana, who maintains a studio in a corner of Hillgartner Natural Stone Company's workshop in Baltimore. Because clay has a tendency to degrade, the sketch was cast in plaster, which served as a model for the carvers to follow. The technique is called waste molding because both the clay sketch and the mold itself are lost once the plaster model is cast. In this process, wet plaster is poured into the mold made of plaster of Paris and usually colored with some dye to distinguish it from the plaster model itself. When the plaster hardens, the mold is hacked away and the model is cleaned up. For this particular work, rather than using the casting process, Martorana sent his sketch to a 3D fabrication lab, where it was printed in several pieces, which were then joined together by the artist and filled with plaster to give it substance. Once the plaster model is produced, carvers use it to create an exact replica of the work in marble. Traditionally, most artists used a method called pointing to accomplish this replication. Prominent points on the plaster model are marked by the carver and serve as reference points. These points provide a guide for the pointing apparatus, an instrument that is essentially a slide rule that operates in 3 dimensions. The sculptor is able to adjust the pin on the pointing apparatus to any position in order to measure the distance from the pointing rod and the point on the model. The measurement of length on the pin is set. With the apparatus in the same position, the sculptor attaches it onto the marble block, and the artist begins to drill at the exact corresponding point. Using the pin as a guide, the sculptor drills only as far as the pin indicates. By this means, the artist is able to find points in space within the block of stone. Once several holes are drilled down to the correct depth, the excess marble is chiseled away, revealing the approximate surface of the emerging sculpture. When the artist needs to remove large areas of stone, he uses a wide hand chisel or a pitching tool. In delicate areas, a smaller chisel is used. Today, artists can take advantage of electric tools, which saves time in the carving process. Electric drills may also be used, but the most delicate areas need to be done by hand so that the carver can control the tool. Here Martorana is drilling into the eagle's brow, with the chisel being rotated by a device called a violin because of its resemblance to a violin bow. This process is slow, but it is necessary in areas where less impact and more control is desired. These carefully drilled holes give the brow area a greater sense of texture and depth. Because of modern technology like electric drills and chisels, Martorana is able to carve his artworks himself without the aid of a team of carvers. But in the 19th century, artists necessarily relied on a team of carvers, each of whom had a particular specialty, like plaster casting, or drapery, or lace. There was even a carver who specialized in carving Reinhardt's signature on the base of the sculptures produced in his studio. Collaboration and manual labor in the stone carver's studio may call into question who the actual artist is.
I don't really think there's much of a difference between, art and craft. They're all just kind of part of a spectrum, maybe. I mean, I'm definitely a craftsman, but I'm also definitely an artist, and I'm definitely a sculptor, and I'm definitely a painter. and I'm definitely an illustrator. It just kind of, they're all words for the same thing, really, and they all kind of just exist around this, amorphous, intangible, impossible to define thing we call art.